The shuttle landed on Station 7 with a soft hiss. Park grabbed his single bag and stepped out onto the metal floor. The air smelled different here. It was thinner and had a strange taste that made his throat feel dry. He looked around at the massive docking bay filled with ships from 100 different worlds. He was the only human. Had known this moment would come. When Earth joined the Galactic Coalition 2 decades ago, humans were the weakest species in the Alliance. They had no natural weapons, no armor on their skin, no special powers. They were just soft, fragile creatures from a small blue planet. But had dreamed of the stars since he was a child. He had trained for years to join the Coalition Military Academy. He had passed every test, learned every regulation, and earned his place. Now he was here, ready to prove himself. A group of recruits stood near the entrance to the main corridor. They were massive creatures. Some had plates of bone covering their bodies like living tanks. Others had 4 arms and eyes that glowed in the dim light. A few seemed to float above the ground, their bodies made of something that was not quite solid. They all turned to look at. The laughter started immediately. "Is that a human?" one of the bone-plated giants asked. His name was, and he stood over 2 meters tall. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I thought they were joking about letting those creatures join." "Look at him," another recruit said. This one was a species with 4 arms and hard shells covering their bodies. No claws, no armor. He probably cannot even survive in normal atmosphere without special equipment. Felt his face grow warm, but he kept walking. He had heard worse on Earth during his training. Humans had called him stupid for wanting to join an alien military. His own family had begged him to stay home where it was safe. But was not looking for safe. He was looking for something more. A loud voice cut through the laughter. "Attention, recruits." Everyone snapped to attention. An officer marched into the docking bay. She had 4 arms like the others of her species, but her shell was covered in scars. Her eyes were cold and hard. This was Sergeant and had read about her in the Academy files. She was famous for breaking recruits. "Welcome to Station 7, said. "I am Sergeant. For the next 6 months I will turn you from soft civilians into Coalition soldiers. Some of you will succeed. Most of you will fail and go home crying to your planets." Her eyes found in the crowd. "Some of you should not be here at all." More laughter stood. Walked through the group, examining each recruit. When she reached, she stopped. She looked down at him like he was an insect she was considering stepping on. "Park, human, age 24 Earth years." She read from a data pad. "No natural weapons, no enhanced strength, requires climate control for comfort, cannot see in the dark, cannot hear subsonic frequencies, cannot smell danger chemicals." She leaned closer. "Tell me, human, why are you here?" Met her eyes. "To serve the Coalition, Sergeant." "The Coalition does not need servants who cannot fight." "I can fight, Sergeant." Mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "We shall see. Squad 9, fall in with your new member. I am sure you will take good care of him." The recruits who stepped forward were a mixed group. There was there, still smirking. 2 warriors joined him, their shells gleaming. A scout floated nearby, its body shifting like smoke. These were the strongest recruits from their worlds, and now was supposed to train beside them. They walked to the training grounds in silence. The station was massive, built inside an asteroid that had been hollowed out over centuries. Corridors stretched in every direction, and strange machines hummed behind the walls. Tried to memorize the path, but everything looked the same. The training ground was a vast open space filled with obstacles. Walls to climb, pits to jump, targets to hit. It was designed for creatures much stronger and faster than humans. "Today we test your basic abilities," announced. "Complete the obstacle course. Those who fail will run it again until they succeed or collapse." Finished in 3 minutes. The warriors finished in 4. The scout simply floated through the obstacles, barely touching them. Then it was turn. He started strong. His body was trained and ready, but the walls were too high for his legs, the pits were too wide for his jump. The targets required strength he did not have. He fell. He struggled. He bled. 11 minutes later, he crossed the finish line. He had failed the time requirement by 6 minutes. The other recruits did not even bother to laugh. They just looked at him with something worse than mockery. They looked at him with pity. Perhaps the coalition made a mistake, announced loudly. Humans were only discovered 20 years ago. Maybe they are not ready for this. Stood with blood running down his arms. His lungs burned from the thin air. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest. He wanted to quit. He wanted to go home. He wanted to admit that everyone was right about him. Instead, he looked at Sergeant and asked a simple question. "Same time tomorrow, Sergeant." His mandibles clicked again. This time the sound was different, surprised perhaps or confused. "Same time tomorrow," she confirmed. As the squad walked back to their quarters, fell into step beside. "You know you cannot do this," they said. "Your body is not made for our training. You will die here human." Kept walking, maybe. Then why stay? Thought about the question. He thought about Earth and the people who had told him he was crazy. He thought about his family and the tears in his mother's eyes when he left. He thought about every person who had ever looked at him and seen weakness. "Because giving up is not who I am," he said simply. Stared at him for a long moment. Then they shook his head and walked away, muttering something about insane mammals. Returned to his quarters and collapsed on his bed. Tomorrow would be worse. He knew that, but tomorrow he would still be here. In the observation deck above the training grounds, a human woman watched the feeds from the day's exercises. Her name was Sara, and she worked as a consultant on the station. She had watched the human recruit fail. She had watched him bleed and struggle and suffer. But she had also watched him stand up and ask to do it again. Sara smiled to herself. She had seen that look before, that stubborn, foolish, magnificent refusal to accept defeat. It was the most human thing in the galaxy. She made a note in her file, "Park, watch this one." Then she returned to her work, wondering what tomorrow would bring. Weeks passed on Station 7. The training became harder every day, and every day Park failed. He could not lift the weights they lifted. He could not run as fast as the. He could not sense the electromagnetic fields that they used to hunt. By every measure the Academy used, he was the worst recruit in the history of the station. But he was still there. Every morning, woke up before the others. He ran extra laps around the station corridors while he slept. He studied the training manuals in languages he barely understood. He watched videos of alien combat techniques until his eyes hurt. And slowly he began to learn. Not how to be stronger, that was impossible. His human body would never match it, but he learned something else. He learned how to watch. During sparring sessions, noticed that always dropped his left shoulder before throwing a punch. The movement was tiny, barely visible, but it was there. On the third week of training, dodged a blow that should have knocked him unconscious. Stared at him in shock. "How did you do that?" "You telegraphed it," said simply. "I did not." "You dropped your left shoulder just a little every time." Tried again. This time he focused on keeping his shoulder still, but now his footwork was wrong and slipped past his guard. They did not score a hit that day. Sergeant watched from the sidelines. Her eyes were unreadable, but she made notes on her data pad. Later, she reviewed the footage 3 times. The human was not getting stronger, but he was getting smarter. Applied the same approach to everything. He could not outrun them, but he learned their fatigue patterns. After 7 minutes of sprinting, they needed to rest. Humans could run for hours at lower speeds, so stopped trying to race them. Instead, he paced himself and caught them when they were tired. They were harder to deal with. Their telepathic abilities let them predict movements before they happened. They could read the surface thoughts of most species and respond before an attack was launched. But human minds were strange. Years of evolution on a planet full of dangers had made them chaotic. Thoughts jumped from topic to topic without warning. Emotions shifted like storms. They found it difficult to read human intentions because humans themselves often did not know what they intended. Learn to lean into this chaos. During training, he would think about random things, his mother's cooking, a song he heard as a child, the color of the sky on Earth. They could not find useful information in this mental noise. Your mind is like static, the scout complained after another failed attempt to predict his moves. It hurts to touch. Sorry said he was not sorry at all. The other recruits stopped laughing at him, not because he was winning. He still lost most matches, but something about him had become unsettling. He should have been broken by now. He should have quit. Every other weak recruit in Academy history had given up within the first month. Was still standing. One evening, found alone in the training room. The human was practicing combat forms, his movements slow and careful. Sweat dripped from his forehead. His bandaged hands showed signs of old injuries. "Why do you not quit?" demanded. Did not stop his practice. Why would I quit? Because you cannot win. You will never be a real soldier. You will never match any of us. This training is designed for warriors and you are just, searched for the right word. You are just a human. Finished his form and turned to face the. On my world we have a saying, fall 7 times, stand up 8. His bone-plated face showed confusion. That is mathematically impossible. Yeah, that is the point. Stood in silence for a long moment. Then he walked away, shaking his head. These humans made no sense. Meanwhile, something was happening in the command levels of the station. Commander was a veteran who had fought in 3 wars. His body was covered in battle scars, and one of his eyes was artificial. He sat in his office, reading reports about a problem that had no solution. The Hollow Reach. It was a region of dead space between 2 coalition sectors. Long-range communications failed there. Navigation systems went haywire. Ships entered and often did not come out. The reason was the Wraith Leviathans. These were apex predators that had evolved in the void of space. They were massive creatures, some as large as battleships. They were drawn to electrical signatures and would attack anything that moved through their territory. Their hides absorbed energy weapons. Kinetic rounds only made them angry. Every expedition sent to study or control them had failed. Hundreds of soldiers had died. Now a convoy needed to pass through the Hollow Reach. It was carrying vital supplies to a distant colony. There was no other route, and Commander needed a plan. His aide knocked on the door. "Sir, the analysts have something about the humans." Looked up, what about them? Their integration files mention something called domestication. Apparently, humans have a unique ability to form bonds with other species. They turned apex predators on their world into companions. Wolves became dogs. Wild cats became. Leaned forward. They formed bonds with predators. Yes, sir, species that could have killed them. Somehow, humans learned to communicate with them, to earn their trust. The aide hesitated. The analysts think this ability might work on the Leviathans. That is insane, said. Yes, sir, but we have tried everything else. Thought about the convoy. He thought about the soldiers who would die if they failed. He thought about the strange human recruit who refused to give up despite being the weakest creature on the station. Assign Squad 9 to the escort mission, he ordered. Include the human. His aide looked surprised. Sir, that squad is not ready for live combat. I know, but if this fails, they are expendable. Stood and walked to his window. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. And if the human can do what the analysts suggest, maybe they will change everything. In her quarters, Sora received the mission briefing on her data pad. She read about the Hollow Reach and the Leviathans. She read about the convoy and the desperate plan. And she read that Park had been assigned to the mission. Sora put down the pad and looked at the stars through her window. "I hope you know what you are doing," she whispered to no one. "I hope you survive." But deep down, she had a feeling. The same feeling she had when she first watched him refuse to quit. Something was about to change. The convoy assembled at the edge of Coalition space, 12 ships in total, cargo vessels carrying medicine and food for a dying colony, military escorts armed with the best weapons the Coalition could provide, and one small transport carrying Squad 9. Park stood at the observation window of their ship, watching the stars. Somewhere ahead was the Hollow Reach. Somewhere in that darkness, creatures waited that had killed thousands of soldiers. He should have been afraid. He was afraid, but he was also curious. Sergeant gathered the squad in the briefing room. A holographic display showed their route through the Hollow Reach. It was marked in red, the color of danger. "Our mission is simple," said. "Escort the convoy through this region. Protect the cargo ships. Do not engage the Leviathans unless absolutely necessary." Raised a massive hand. "Sergeant, what are our weapons against these creatures?" "We have standard armaments, energy cannons, kinetic missiles." Paused. "They will not work. The Leviathans absorb energy and ignore kinetics. If one of them attacks, our only option is to run." The squad exchanged worried looks. Soldiers did not like being told their weapons were useless. "Then why are we here?" one of them asked. Looked directly at. "Because Command believes our human recruit might have special abilities that could help us survive this mission." Every eye in the room turned too. He felt his stomach drop. "What abilities?" asked suspiciously. "Humans have a history of forming bonds with dangerous creatures," said. "On there, they turned predators into allies. Command hopes this skill might translate to the Leviathans." Silence filled the room, then laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "We are betting our lives on the weakest recruit in the academy, making friends with the deadliest creatures in the galaxy." "Yes," said flatly, "those are our orders." After the briefing, found himself alone in the observation deck. His mind was racing. He had read about the Leviathans during his training. He knew how dangerous they were. The idea that he could somehow communicate with them seemed insane. The door opened behind him. Sora walked in. "You looked like you needed company," she said. Turned. He had met Sora a few times during his training. She was one of the few humans on the station, and she had always been kind to him. "They think I can talk to those things," he said. "I am just a recruit who cannot even pass basic training." Sora walked to stand beside him at the window. "Do you know why Command chose you?" "Because I am expendable." "That is part of it, but there is something else." Sora turned to face him. "I have watched your training sessions. You do something no other recruit does. You pay attention, you observe, you learn. That is not a special ability. It is exactly what you need." Sora pulled up a display on her data pad. "Look at the Leviathan encounters. Every species that tried to approach them used the same strategy. They showed strength. They displayed weapons. They tried to establish dominance. And the Leviathans killed them. Because the Leviathans are the apex predators, they cannot be dominated, but humans did not tame wolves by dominating them. We earned their trust. We showed them we were not a threat." Sora put down the pad. "You need to approach these creatures the way your ancestors approached dangerous animals, not with strength but with patience." Thought about her words. He thought about the dogs and cats on Earth. He thought about the stories of early humans who had first made contact with wolves. "I do not know if I can do this," he admitted. "Neither do I," Sora said, "but you are the only one who might." The convoy entered the Hollow Reach 2 days later. The change was immediate. Stars seemed dimmer here. Communications became static. The ship's sensors filled with strange readings that made no sense. And then the Leviathan appeared. It emerged from a field of ancient debris, 60 meters long. Its body was like nothing had ever seen. It seemed to be made of darkness itself, with patterns of light rippling across its hide like bioluminescence in deep ocean creatures. Alarms screamed throughout the convoy, weapons powered up, soldiers ran to battle stations. But did not move. He stood at the observation window and watched. The Leviathan was not attacking, it was circling. Its light patterns shifted and changed, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes in sequences that almost seemed deliberate. "It is communicating," whispered. Appeared beside him. "What?" "Look at the patterns. They change when our ships move, when we power weapons, when we change course." Pressed his hand against the glass. "It is not hunting, it is studying us, just like we are studying it." The ship's captain was screaming orders over the communication system. Weapons were locked on the creature. Everyone was ready to fight. "Do not shoot," said suddenly. Grabbed his shoulder. "What are you doing?" "If we shoot, it will attack. It is waiting to see what we do." Turned to face his. "I need you to trust me. Tell the captain to power down weapons." "That is insane." "Yes, but I am right." Stared at him for a long moment. Then, against every instinct in his body, he opened a communication channel to the captain. "Sir, the human recommends powering down weapons." "The human can throw himself out of an airlock," the captain replied. Sergeant's voice cut in. "Captain, our orders come from Commander directly. The human has authority in Leviathan encounters." A long pause. Then reluctantly the captain gave the order. Weapons powered down across the convoy. Everyone held their breath. The Leviathan's light patterns shifted. The creature drifted closer. Its massive form filled the observation window. Could see details now. Its hide was covered in something like scales. Its eyes were vast and ancient and intelligent. It was looking at him. Did not know what to do. He had no weapons. He had no special powers. He was just a weak human standing at a window. So he did the only thing he could think of. He raised his hand and waved. The Leviathan's lights flickered. For one terrible moment thought it would attack. He thought he had killed everyone. Then the creature turned. It moved away from the convoy. It took position beside the lead ship. And it stayed there. His voice was barely a whisper. "What just happened?" Lowered his hand. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it. "I think I made a friend." The convoy moved deeper into the hollow reach. The Leviathan followed. For 3 days the massive creature stayed with them. It swam through the void like a living shadow, its light patterns shifting in rhythms that was beginning to understand. Fast pulses meant curiosity. Slow waves meant calm. When the patterns turned sharp and angular, the Leviathan was concerned. Spent every available moment at the observation window. He watched the creature and took notes. He drew its patterns on his data pad. He tried to understand its language. Because it was a language, he was sure of that now. Sora joined him whenever her duties allowed. Together, they documented the Leviathan's behavior. They noticed that it reacted to different ships in different ways. Cargo vessels received calm patterns. Military ships received watchful patterns. And the transport carrying Squad 9 received something that looked almost like affection. "It knows we are here," Sora said one evening. "It knows you specifically." "How can you tell?" "Watch when you leave the window." Sora pulled up footage on her pad. "See. When you walk away, its patterns become agitated. When you return, they calm down." Watched the footage 3 times. She was right. The creature was tracking him. It was aware of him in a way it was not aware of the others. "Why me?" he asked. "I do not know," Sora admitted. "Maybe because you were the first to try communicating. Maybe because you are different from the others." She paused. "Or maybe it just likes you." On the fourth day, everything changed. Sensors detected movement ahead. Not one Leviathan, 5 of them. They were smaller than the one following the convoy, but they were aggressive. Their patterns were sharp and hostile. They were approaching fast. Alarms screamed throughout the fleet. Soldiers prepared for battle. The captain ordered all weapons powered up. "We cannot fight 5 of them," Sergeant said grimly. "1 was impossible, 5 is death." Watched through the window as the hostile Leviathans approached. They moved in a hunting formation. Their lights flashed in patterns of warning and threat. But the Leviathan that had been following them did not run. Instead, it moved forward. It positioned itself between the convoy and the approaching predators. And its patterns changed. They became bright and rapid. They pulsed with colors had never seen before. The creature was communicating with the others. It was speaking in a language older than any species in the coalition. The 5 hostile Leviathans stopped. They hovered in space, their patterns shifting from aggression to confusion. The convoy's Leviathan continued its display. Bright pulses, slow waves, complex sequences that seemed to carry meaning. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the hostile Leviathans turned away. They disappeared into the darkness of the hollow reach. The convoy was safe. Found slumped against the observation window. The human was shaking. His face was pale. He looked like he had just run a marathon. "What just happened?" demanded. "It protected us," said. His voice was weak. "It told the others that we were not prey, that we were something else." "What else?" Looked up at I do not know the word, but I think it means pack. Stared at him. Then the massive warrior sat down on the floor beside him. For the first time since training began, his voice held no mockery. "You really did it," said. "You made friends with the apex predator of the galaxy." "I do not think I did anything," admitted. "I just paid attention. I showed it that I was not a threat. I tried to understand instead of dominate." He laughed weakly. "All the things that make humans bad at combat made this possible." "You are still bad at combat." "Yes, very bad." But was smiling now. It was a strange expression on his bone-plated face. "My people have a saying too," the said. "Strength comes in many forms. I always thought it meant physical power, but maybe it means something else." The convoy emerged from the hollow reach 2 days later. They had lost no ships. They had suffered no casualties. It was the first successful passage through the region in coalition history. And the Leviathan followed them out. When they reached Station 7, the creature took position in the debris field surrounding the station. It did not attack. It did not hunt. It simply stayed there, its patterns calm and watchful. The coalition military was in chaos. Commander received hundreds of messages demanding explanations. Scientists wanted to study the creature. Weapons experts wanted to capture it. Politicians wanted to know if it was dangerous. But the Leviathan would not let anyone approach except one person. When took a shuttle into the debris field, the creature moved to greet him. Its lights pulsed with what he now recognized as happiness. It circled his tiny ship, patterns flowing across its massive hide. Activated the shuttle's external lights. Slowly, carefully, he began to mimic the Leviathan's patterns. Not perfectly. His attempts were clumsy and simple, but the creature responded. Its patterns became slower, simpler. It was teaching him, like a parent teaching a child. "I need a name for you," said softly. He watched the creature move through space, silent and graceful despite its enormous size. It flowed like water, like wind. He decided, the Korean word for wind. When returned to the station, Sara was waiting for him in the docking bay. "The coalition wants to know how you did it," she said. "They want to replicate your techniques, train other soldiers." Shook his head. "They cannot replicate it. It is not a technique." "Then what is it?" He thought about the question. He thought about his training and his failures. He thought about every time he had been told he was too weak, too soft, too human. Every species in the coalition looks at the galaxy and sees competition, he said finally. Predators and prey, enemies to defeat, hierarchies to climb, but humans see something different. What do we see? Smiled, potential friends. We look at the most dangerous thing in the room and wonder if it wants to be friends. We look at wolves and see dogs. We look at apex predators and see companions. Sora laughed. That sounds insane when you say it out loud. It is insane, but it works. Looked out through the station window. Somewhere in the debris field was waiting. The Leviathans have been alone for millions of years. Every species that encountered them tried to fight or run. We were the first to try something else. We were the first to reach out. And now it follows you like a pet. Not a pet, corrected. A partner, there is a difference. Outside drifted past the station window. Its patterns were slow and content. The creature that had terrorized the Hollow Reach for centuries had found something it never expected in the vastness of space. It had found a friend. The weeks after the Hollow Reach mission changed everything. Park went from being the Academy's worst recruit to its most famous. News spread across the coalition about the human who had tamed a wraith Leviathan. Reporters from a dozen species requested interviews. Scientists sent endless questions about his methods. Military commanders wanted to know if his techniques could be trained. But did not care about fame, he cared about. Every day he took a shuttle into the debris field. Every day he spent hours with the Leviathan. They were learning each other's languages, taught the patterns of light that carried meaning in the void, taught simple human gestures. A wave meant greeting. An open hand meant peace. A closed fist meant danger. Slowly, they began to understand each other. Commander summoned to his office 1 month after the mission. The old looked tired but pleased. The coalition has made a decision, said. We are creating a new division. Relations, you will lead it. Stared at him. Lead, sir, I am still a recruit. I have not even finished basic training. Basic training teaches soldiers to fight. You have proven that some problems cannot be solved by fighting. Stood and walked to his window. Outside, drifted slowly past. The universe is full of creatures we do not understand. Dangerous creatures, deadly creatures. Perhaps humanity's approach will work where ours has failed. I do not know if I can do this, sir. Turned back to face him. You said that before entering the Hollow Reach. You were wrong then, too. The promotion ceremony was held in the station's main hall. Soldiers from every species in the coalition attended. Stood on the platform, wearing a new uniform that still felt strange on his body. Sergeant was there. She stepped forward to pin the insignia of rank on his chest. Her 4 arms moved with precision. I told you that you would never be a real soldier, she said quietly. I was wrong. You are not a soldier. You are something else. Something the coalition has never seen. What am I, Sergeant? Mandibles clicked. It was the sound she made when she was amused. A diplomat, a bridge between species, a human. The crowd applauded, was there, cheering louder than anyone. The who had mocked on his first day was now his strongest supporter. You know, said later at the celebration dinner, I still think you are insane. Your entire species is insane. You have mentioned that before. But I have decided it is a good kind of insane, raised his drinking vessel, to the human who made friends with death itself. The others raised their vessels too, species that had never shared a table before, warriors who had never respected a weaker creature, all of them drinking to the honor of Park, the human recruit. Sora found on the observation deck later that night. He was alone, watching the stars. You should be at your party, she said. I needed to think, turned to face her. Sora, what happens now? The coalition has never had a division like this. I have no training, no experience. I just got lucky with one creature. It was not luck. Sora walked to stand beside him. You have a gift. All humans do, but you have more of it than most. The ability to see intelligence in other beings. The instinct to reach out instead of attack. That sounds like weakness to the rest of the galaxy. It used to, not anymore. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sora spoke again. I received a message from Earth today. They want you to return home for a visit. You have become quite famous there too. Smiled, he thought about his family, his mother who had cried when he left, his father who had called him foolish. He wondered what they would think of him now. Maybe someday, he said, but right now I have work to do here. Outside the station was performing what had learned to recognize as a patrol. The Leviathan moved through the debris field, checking for threats, protecting the station and everyone in it. A year ago, that creature would have destroyed any ship that came near. Now it guarded them like a loyal companion. Sora followed his gaze. How did you really do it? Not the patterns, not the techniques. What did you actually do to earn its trust? Thought about the question for a long time. I showed it that I was small, he said finally. I showed it that I was weak. I showed it that I could not hurt it even if I wanted to. And then I showed it that I was not afraid. That combination does not make sense. It does if you are lonely, pressed his hand against the glass. Spent millions of years as the apex predator. Nothing could challenge it, nothing could threaten it, and nothing could understand it, until I came along. He turned to face Sora. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest or the most advanced. But we are the only species that looks at something dangerous and asks, does it want to be friends? Sora laughed softly. We are a strange species. We are, and that strangeness might be the most valuable thing we can offer the universe. Outside's patterns shifted, bright pulses of light, the kind that meant happiness. The Leviathan had sensed that was watching. The creature who had once laughed at the human recruit was dead now. The one who saw only weakness. In his place was a new, one who understood that strength could wear many faces. The sergeants who had expected failure had found success. The commanders who had sent as an expendable test had found a new way forward. And the human recruit who had refused to quit had discovered something wonderful. That sometimes the things others throw away become exactly what someone else needs. That cruelty often comes from blindness, and kindness often comes from seeing clearly. That every single person, no matter how weak they seem, has the power to change the universe. They had laughed at the human recruit. They were not laughing anymore. The end.